All right, in this video, we're going to talk about how to replace your trigger spring. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to field strip our pistol here and remove our slide. Now from the right side of your frame here, you're going to see two pins along the grip. We're going to go ahead and pop those out. So you can take a punch. They might be loose enough to where you don't need a hammer. Let's see here. All right, one was. All right, so you're going to take out this chassis here. Now you should be able to see your trigger spring right here. So what we're going to do next is we're going to take our punch again. And for this top pin here that's holding in the spring, you want to just punch it out just a little bit so that we have access to the spring here so we can remove it. All right, so you want just about that much of the pin out, and then we should be able to get that spring out of there. And then we're just going to remove it from the trigger bar. And there you go, there's your trigger spring. Now we're going to take our new spring and we're just going to try to finagle the coils inside this little section here that we just removed the old one from. And once the coils are in there, you just want to line up the holes to make sure that the pin can get back in. All right, so once the pin is through, we're just going to take the hook that's on the other end of the spring here, and we're just going to attach it right back to the trigger bar again. All right, so before we put our chassis back in, one thing that did happen when I took it out, and it may happen for you, might not, but this little lockout arm here did come out. So it's a little piece here. It's got a tiny little spring. So make sure not to lose that. So but we can go ahead, there's going to be a little hole at the bottom of the lockout arm. We're going to just pre-prep our spring there. So first thing we need to do with the chassis is to release the hammer. So how we're going to do that is you see this little notch on the side there. So with our thumb, we're just going to apply pressure onto the hammer from above. And then we're going to take our other thumb and just pull that lever out. There you go. So hammer is now out. And that lockout arm is just going to sit right in this groove here. So go ahead and take our arm. Again, the spring to be prepped. This is going to go all the way through. Then you will see that the spring is going to be outside of that little groove there. So we're just going to take our thumb and push it where it needs to be. All right, and there we go. So now that that's in, let's go ahead and take our frame and take our chassis. And as we put the chassis in, we want to make sure that the hammer bar is sitting right inside this groove here. So then if you want to, with your index finger, you can actually hold the chassis in place. We're just making sure that these two holes are aligning so we can put our pins back in. And then go ahead and pop a pin in, pop in the bottom one. Might be our punch. All right, so pins are back in. We're gonna go ahead, put the hammer back down. All right, so you should see your new spring here. Let's go ahead, take our slide, and do a quick function test. All right, there you go. Trigger spring is replaced. Now you are good to go.